Hello, it's me again. I already recorded this tutorial several times until I realized that I talked to myself for a solid 2 hours because I forgot to plug in my microphone. So here we are once again. You don't even know you were there once, but welcome back. And I'm back with another Touchdesigner tutorial. It will be about another lazy painting, but in this case it's not so lazy anymore because you could, if you want to, and if you're not too lazy to, you could interact with it. But it's also okay if you don't. In my case, I'm using a gamepad, a Microsoft gamepad with the joysticks to control the movement or the transformation of the liquid thing. In this tutorial I will show how to do this with the mouse because I'm sorry, because I think it's more inclusive because everyone has a mouse, not everyone has a gamepad. But actually you could use any kind of control input. You just have to select the right channels which you want to use for the transform and plug them into the X and Y parameter. Yeah, but let's get started. I already collapsed this one for my first recordings and then I deactivated it. So in order to start, the first thing we are going to use is a constant chop to set our resolution, as always. And surprise, surprise, we are going to use the noise top to start. And then let's export that resolution. And one thing I want to mention is that this noise basically defines the whole composition and the whole movement kind of thing and the look of it. And I will show you what parameters I used, but in case you want to change anything about the look or the movement, you will have to do it in here. So don't count my parameters as the ones to go with. I just like them the most, and I'm 100% sure that you like other parameters more. So I brought up the scale a little bit, and I also increased the period a little bit, and actually I will leave the rest for it right now. One thing we need to change is the pixel format, because we want as much color information as possible to give us really nice details. So I used 32-bit float RGBA. The A is really important because it gives us the alpha channel, which allows us to use transparency, which is important for the feedback, because otherwise it won't work. So don't forget this. And of course we are going to animate it with my favorite appstime.seconds. And I want the movement to be kind of slow, so I multiplied it with 0.3, which gives us some nice and smooth movement. But right now, this movement is too nervous for the thing we are going for, but not the speed of it, which we define with our appstime, but the look of it isn't smooth. It kind of moves very, very nice, but it doesn't look like it. So, to change this, we are going to use a level in which we will bring down the opacity to something really small, like, I don't know, 0.05. Maybe we will change this in the end. And then we are going to use a feedback. And this feedback will smooth out our movement. And in order to have the movement, we need this really slight shade of our noise. So we use a over to composite this one over this one, so we still have something. So use this as the reference for the feedback. And right now this is still too heavy, so I will bring down the opacity even more. Yeah, this is fine, I think. And please don't care too much about the shitty look of this gray thing, because this gray thing just defines our movement and is not that important for the look of it. We will get the look otherwise, but it's really important for the movement and for everything that it looks this smooth. And if you look closely, you see we have some kind of edges here which are ugly. So I brought in a blur in this displacement. I set it to 1 and 2, so we get rid of these. And we will make some changes to this feedback loop in the end, but right now we are going to use this. And I want this to be displaced, so use a displace. And if you know me from my recent tutorials, you would think that that I will displace it by itself, which gives us an interesting look. But in this case, we are going for something different. So let's bring in a new top, which we didn't use recently. So I found out that the slope is really interesting. And you will recognize if we just plug in this into the slope, we kind of look very boring. And this is because we need to increase the strength of it, but we need to increase it heavily. And I found out that it works pretty fine if you use the same parameter you use for your resolution. So if we plug this one in here, we get something. And you might not get what this is, because so do I. I don't really have an idea what this slope thing does, but I found out that it is really interesting for animations, because it kind of speeds up the pixels, which is really interesting for displacement, or basically everything. And we could displace this one by this slope, which already gives us a very interesting look. I will just change the pixel format once again so we have more information, which you can't see right now, but it's good. And yeah, right now we get an kind of interesting look, but it's still not what we are going for. So I thought it would be cool to use this one as a reference for another noise. So I copied this noise and I plugged in this into the reference. And I got this really interesting thing, which I really like. And I used both of this for this and use this as a displacement. And I kind of like it, but still not what we are going for. So bring in the noise once again and use this one. And right now yeah, we have this expression still in here, so delete this so we don't have this color changing. Then bring down the displacement a little bit, so we have some really slight, I don't know, maybe 0.4. Yeah, I think this is cool. And in order to change the look of this, just play around with the parameters of this. So I increased the harmonics a little bit, and I think I brought up the scale, I don't know, the period. Nope, I wrote it down. And I kind of like this. I also made it non-monochrome. And yeah, just play around with some parameters. And another thing that is really interesting, if we just delete this for now and just displace it by this, I like it a little bit more. No, I think this is looking a little bit crazy, but I kind of dig it. And we could make some changes if we want to in this slope, which gives us a totally different look in the end. So if you bring in a HSV adjust and increase the value, we get some different results, which are pretty cool. So also you could change the colorway of it by playing with the hue offset. I won't do that for now. And also let's have a look what we can get if we play around with this anymore. I think it's cooler if we don't displace it too much and do some really slight displacement. I think this is pretty cool. I really like this. I don't like the colorways yet, and I won't get into that too much because in my recent recordings I found out that it's kind of annoying that I'm always so pissed if something looks ugly. So yeah, but it does. So yeah, I kind of like this one. I will turn off the monochrome for now. Turn on the monochrome for now because it's too much for my eyes right now. So let's bring in some interactivity now. So we have this whole thing, but we want to control it. So to do so, we are going to make some changes in this feedback loop. So the first thing is to bring in a transform. Let's give us some more space. And in order to have this more melting look, I brought down the scale a little bit, but be careful with these parameters because, as you might remember from my last tutorials, I told you that if you make some transformations in the feedback loop, it does every transformation you set from frame to frame. So if you go too heavy with those numbers, those changes will be nervous as fuck. So just be careful with these numbers and go with the slowest kind of changes. So I will bring this down to something like this. And also I included some rotation. So we get this kind of tunnel and melting look. And now we have this thing and we want to control this thing. So in order to do so, let's bring in a mouse in. And if you remember from my first tutorial, this is basically the same thing we need to do. Bring in a math and let's connect it to a null to make it more clear. And so we need to change the range of our mouse movement because we don't want it to be everywhere. So, and also we want it to move from negative to positive. So we need to change it from -1 to 1. And if you remember, we don't want it to be, we want it to be on the screen. So we need to know what is on the screen. And so we need to change the range. But in this case, I don't want this thing to follow my mouse completely. Sorry. I just want it to follow the direction of my mouse and have some kind of delay. so it's not following it nervously, because we want this whole smooth thing and we don't want to lose this. So we just want that direction. And so I found out that if I use some really small number here, I'm getting that. So I used something like this and this, and then I export this tx on the x-axis and this one on the y. Now you can see that this thing follows the movement, but it doesn't follow the position. I don't know if I get that clear, but I think you know what I mean. And if you change something in those numbers, you get a totally different result. So for example, if I use something like this, you see it completely follows my movement and it looks shitty. Or it looks totally different. Let's say it like this. And if you use some smaller numbers, you get a totally different result. So feel free to play around with this. And also, if you look closely, or you don't have to look this closely, but if you don't like these edges we get here, I kind of like this, and that's the reason for letting them in. But if you don't like them, I recommend to bring in a blur and, I don't know, set it up so you have a whole thing that is looking more liquid. If you play around with these numbers, and the higher you get, the more you get rid of these edges, or yeah, whatever you like. I don't know, I like it without the blur. And also I found out it could be kind of interesting to use a displacement in the feedback. So let's try it out. If we displace it by itself, remember, go slow with these numbers. We get some even more if you just change one parameter. We get some even more melting look. So maybe let's bring it down to this, and then you make it more abstract and even more melting and whatever you like. So remember, you can always include some really interesting stuff into the feedback loops, which can make everything more interesting. So for example, if we want to get a totally different result, you can also scale it up so you have this more, I don't know, thingy, whatever you like. And if you want to change the overall look of it, you can change it in this final noise. If you want it to have some colors, just play with, wow, that's crazy. Let's play with these numbers and the seed and I don't know, whatever you like. And in my setup where I included the controller, which I let in the space container. If you want to control it with a gamepad, just use the base I set up here and look at it. It's basically the same, but with other channels. But in this container, I also controlled the colorways with a joystick. And in case you want to use some kind of information you get from a mouse or from another controller, you could do this by translating this noise. So let's do it for now. Let's try something out. If we use these numbers onto something like this. There you can see if you change some numbers here, you get different colorways. So maybe if we use some of these parameters, maybe I think this is not, those numbers are not heavy enough to change something in here. So let's try something out. And let's use this null. And let's use another math. And let's multiply it. No, let's use this. And let's use a null. I think these numbers are still not heavy enough. So let's just add 1. So we get a number here. And let's try if this works. Huh? Not really. Maybe let's try if we use abs time dot seconds and add the oops. I'm sorry, this is kind of crazy. Maybe do we get some help? I'm sorry about this. Yeah, this was a shitty experiment. I will find a way to control the colors by the mouse movement, but we haven't found out yet. This was a fun little exercise, but it didn't work out. And remember, progress is not a straight line. And I think I love this quote, because try and error and you will get better. So you just saw me error, and I might get better from time to time. So I think this is a good point to stop this tutorial. I showed you what I wanted to show you. I sadly didn't get to show you anything else, but I hope you still liked it. I hope you learned something, and I hope you stay creative. I would love to see what you come up with using this technique. So feel free to send me stuff or to tag me and stuff. And yeah, stay kind, stay creative, and stay safe. I hope you're doing okay. And I hope we will, or I hope you will hear me the next time. And I would love to hear from you. So, bye bye.